Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Between Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Mattson. Today's guest, I don't know, might be my long lost brother or something. I'm not sure. I mean it though. This guy is so closely aligned with the stuff that gets me personally really excited and the stuff that Between is all about, that I'm starting to maybe wonder if we're somehow family or something. And we've got to figure that out. Today's guest is doing something so closely related to the work we're doing at Between. I'm actually guessing there are people out there listening who might advise me not to feature him on our show because maybe he's, a competitor or my arch nemesis. I don't know, but I couldn't possibly be more excited to not only introduce you all to Eugene Kim, but I also want to actively and excitedly recommend that you go check out Eugene's project called New Wine Collective right now. Go to newwinecollective.org. I think that's where it is. Sign up for his email list. Follow him on social media. He's doing just some incredible stuff. Eugene, I'll read your official introduction, your bio here in a minute, but would you maybe start by giving us the elevator pitch for what New Wine Collective is all about?
I will try. First of all, it's awesome to meet you, Matt, and I love your name, Matt Mattson. That is just so smooth. I'm not good at elevator pitches, so it comes out differently every time. But I will say, just to put it simply, our goal is simply to make it possible for anyone to do church anywhere. We believe people are just longing for spiritual connection and community, but the traditional programmatic kind of centralized model of church is just simply working for fewer and fewer people. And so we're trying to develop a model for group gatherings that can empower people to create their own spiritual community wherever they are. And so that's part of the work. The other part of the work is that the way we hope to accomplish this is by building an online tool, a digital tool that helps facilitate spiritual conversations and community and connects groups with one another so that they can share their learning and their wisdom and resources with one another. And so in a nutshell, ultimately, we just want to lower barriers and make genuine, loving spiritual community accessible to all. And so, pardon me, I have this Band-Aid on my thumb because I sliced my finger open while making dinner yesterday. So hope that's not too distracting.
Do you need
that's part of the pitch.
Medical attention? You're okay. Oh, that's part of it. Part of it is
yes.
If you too are wounded from a kitchen accident yesterday, the New Wine Collective can help. All right, good.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah.
All right, well, maybe let me formally introduce you, and we'll dive more deeply into that elevator pitch that I thought was pretty solid, by the way. But
thanks.
Eugene is an ordained minister with over 25 years of experience in local church ministry. For 17 years, I think you played a pivotal role in growing a church from its early stages into a thriving multi-location community. I want to learn all about that. But at some point, your bio teaches me that you recognize the need to rethink traditional church models. You discerned that it was time to step beyond the familiar and reimagine what it means to be and do church from the ground up. So you left your pastoral role in 2020, which was, I'm sure, a big moment in your life. 2020 was a big moment in all of our lives. And you established New Wine Collective, a church innovation think tank and R&D lab. Man, we could do a whole podcast just about the sentence, a church innovation think tank and R&D lab, and how badly church needs R&D and real labs where you're doing that work. You are New Wine Collective's chief architect and synthesizer of ideas, but still a pastor at heart who loves walking alongside people in their journeys. Your bio teaches me that you're passionate about systemic change, which doesn't surprise me, and designing new ways of being the church that can help heal the world and give everyone a place to belong. You grew up in Queens, New York, and Seoul, Korea, and now you live in the Boston area. Says here you've got 3 children. You enjoy good food, cooking, and watching Korean dramas with your wife. All right. I always love bios. I've written and rewritten my bio multiple times to give to people to introduce me for different things. But I always know that there's stuff underneath parts of those bios. Like every sentence, there's like a whole, part of your life that is built into that. I'm curious, what are Will you maybe take a couple, maybe three parts of your bio that you want to tell us more about? I
Yeah.
don't know. What are some stories that go that fill the spaces
Hmm.
in that bio?
Yeah. I love this question. It's so good. Um, I think one thing that I will share that is not apparent in my bio, I think my bio makes it sound like one day I just decided I'm going to venture out into the unknown and do this new thing. And, I think what is not apparent in the bio is that I am not the hero in this story. I did not just decide one day to leave everything I knew and loved for decades. My departure from church was painful, as it was, I'm sure, for so many others. And it's, the part of the bio that's not there, it has taken me a long time to heal and even acknowledge some of the pain and damage that I experienced from church. Nowadays, a lot of people talk about church hurt.
Yeah.
I would not compare my experience to anyone else's, but long story short is my departure was hard. It was a huge disruption to me and my family, and unfortunately, this is the pain that was kind of needed to move me and to open my eyes to a lot of things that I either buried or rationalized. But I do believe in redemption. So I believe that it kind of led me exactly to where I need to be and to do what I need to be doing now. So sorry to start things off in a heavy way, but that's just kind of like the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh man,
Um,
well, that's so real for so many of our listeners. I think,
mhm.
and I think it's probably heartening for many listeners to just hear you say, actually, underneath that, that clean little bio of, you know, uh, ordained minister who decides to innovate and decide,
Yeah.
got everything has been perfect in my spiritual life. Well, no, I
Mm.
think that's probably true for most of us, is we've got some cracks, if not some entire foundational disruption in
Hmm.
our spiritual past.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention.
Mhm.
And so I did not set out to innovate and to, change the world or anything like that. It was literally when I first started New Wine Collective, I didn't even know what it was. I had no idea what I was doing. All I knew was that I didn't want to replicate the same thing that I'd been doing for the past few decades in ministry. And so that's kind of the genesis of it. It came out of a lot of unknown, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of like sorting through some pretty difficult baggage. Um, but the other thing I'll add to my bio that might be a little interesting is, how I grew up in Queens, New York, which is like one of the most diverse, probably square few mile areas
Yeah.
in the world. And, again, a long story short is I was truant in high school, so I didn't go to school. And so that's how I ended up moving to Korea, back to Korea. My parents were Korean immigrants.
Yeah.
They immigrated to the United States. And then I grew up in Korean immigrant churches. But I had kind of a rebellious phase. And so I didn't end up going to school for an entire year. And so I moved to Korea, where obviously there are a lot of Koreans in Korea. And then from there, um, long story short, maybe we need to break this out into a whole other episode. But I ended up in Wenham, Massachusetts after high school. And I just got dropped in the middle of very, very, very Caucasian Massachusetts, New England. And I ended up at the time, very, very predominantly white evangelical Christian college. So culturally, I've just been sort of like all over the place.
Yeah.
And so that third culture experience, if you're familiar with that term, is something that has really shaped the way I view myself, the world, people, and especially spirituality and Christianity.
The I can only imagine the sense that you've been able to have because of that personal journey, the sense that you've been able to gain of
Mm.
the way faith manifests itself within different communities, within different
Hmm.
cultures,
Yeah.
and within different, different hemispheres. Like what the I am so enamored by that. I think I find myself really passionate about learning how spirituality just shows up in your life when you're from a place that's different from all the places that I've been. And I
Yes.
just keep learning so much about people and about myself too. I think by feeling the reflection of that and wondering, oh,
Hmm.
why don't I think that? Why wasn't that my experience? What did I experience that I thought was the default, that in fact was just my
Yes.
particular little bucket of the world, right? I wonder if any of that
Yes.
resonates with you.
100%. Yes. I think growing up, there was no distinction between Korean culture and what was Christian culture.
Yeah.
It was all enmeshed and wrapped into this one confusing bowl. And you know the saying, culture eats strategy for
Yeah.
breakfast.
Yeah.
People apply that to like business, but I take it like literally culture eats our theology for breakfast. It
Mm-hmm.
eats our spiritual practices for breakfast,
Yes.
our biblical hermeneutic.
Yeah.
Like it determines so much of our perception of God and each other and all of that. So I also find that fascinating.
Yes. And beautiful. And
Yes.
when we maybe when our projects that we're doing together between and New Wine Collective, when we give people permission to let
Mm.
their world, their culture
Hmm.
eat whatever we're offering, and then,
Yeah.
this is a weird metaphor, but digest it in a way that makes sense
Mm.
there, that makes sense in their
Hmm.
world, in their real life, in their community. Man, I think that requires us to remove ourselves from it,
Mm.
right? Like
Yeah,
to not be beholden to it, to not be selfish with it.
that's right.
I
Yeah.
think it can be just such a powerful thing when that happens.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, you said it, like there's no such thing as normal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Every culture, every experience brings with it gifts and also some things that are, might not be considered gifts. And, it's beauty and brokenness mixed.
Yeah.
And so we all have a part. None of us are the whole picture. And I believe this is actually one of the major shifts that are happening in the spiritual landscape is globalization
Mm-hmm,
and technology.
mm-hmm,
We're finally aware, like, oh, I'm in a belief system, or I'm
mm-hmm,
in a cultural kind of container. And there are other belief systems and there are other cultural containers. And we're all trying to describe reality the best we can.
mm-hmm.
And we all kind of have a piece of it. And I really believe that is completely changing the way that, we're already practicing faith.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, man. I that is ooh, we could have done a whole podcast. Maybe we'll do another episode about that, about globalization and us discovering our own containers by having them bump into
Yes.
the containers of other people in ways that we just didn't expect. Okay,
Yeah.
but before we get lost in that particular aside, I want to ask a straightforward question, and it relates
Okay.
to what I think is the mission or the purpose or what New Wine Collective is responding to. Uh,
Mm.
the question is simple: is church dying?
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
wonder how that hits you.
Yeah. Depends on how you're spelling the question. Is it with a capital C, Church Universal, Church Mystic, or a small c, the kind of religious container that's developed over the past few hundred years? And I will say that. So the answer is complicated. It's yes and no. I certainly believe that the Church capital C, the Church Universal, is evolving, and I guess with evolution, like adaptation, new life requires things to die. That's simply the pattern of life. Even the pattern of Christian theology is life, death, and resurrection. And so, it's the whole, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains single seed. If it dies, it produces many seeds. So, you know, we shouldn't be afraid or surprised by death, by things dying and things running its course, and becoming compost so that new life can come from it. And it's just part of the deal. And so I see the church, capital C, as shedding some of the small c. It's being refined. So yes, there are things that need dying, but only so that new life can be reborn. So I actually have a very optimistic outlook on what is happening in the church today. I think it's an exciting time for the church.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you? What's your answer?
Oh, that's fun. First of all, I love that your answer is yes, the church is dying. It has to die. And I'm optimistic about it. Like what a resurrection rooted answer to that question. If I was just asked that question without any context, I think my answer would be yeah. I mean, look at any measurable, and the answer is yep, including satisfaction, reputation, obviously attendance, membership, all of the real estate. I mean, anything you can count. The answer is yes. Yeah. Do I think church? Do I think that's what church was always supposed to be? No, that was the iteration that made sense in a post-industrial, Western context that led the expansion and colonial. That was that manifestation. And to your point earlier, you never know when you're in a chapter of a history book when it's taking place. But later on, 100 years from now, people are going to be writing about this time for a number of reasons. And we are smack in the middle of a really interesting chapter of a history book, a global history book. And the way church shows up now in the middle of it and after this, as it's being reborn, I agree with you there. I think is just going to be so wonderful to see, because it simply will reflect the needs of the human beings that are making it real. I think I am, Eugene, I'm a big, my theology, if I look at my Christ related theology, I mostly I get excited about when Jesus was a human, I just get excited about when Jesus was here, and the lessons I can learn from that, only because it's just so relatable. There's a lot of other stuff that I'm fascinated by and find my mystical side drawn to and curious about and inspired by. I don't know, but the stuff I think about daily, the stuff I think about is so often just the humanness. And so as I think about, is church dying? I don't think so. I think it's just humans need something else, and humans are humans just as they were 2,000 some years ago. And so they're going to create something else out of our beautiful, flawed, imperfect, striving, hopeful, optimistic humanity. And so I think that's I think we are aligned on a lot of that anyway.
I'm with you.
Where we are right now.
Yeah, the church is changing, just like it has many, many times throughout history. And here we are again, a period of massive change.
So within that context, in the period of massive change, I'm curious, you're an ordained minister. You've got the credentials, you've got, what do you think the role is of the ordained, of the flocked, of ministers and pastors today and in the future, of the way that we gather and build community around faith and in the way that we worship?
Yeah. I think I want to start answering that question by saying there's no one broad stroke, single answer, right? It's always many things happening at the same time. So in many ways, I feel like the role of the traditional ordained pastor, minister within a worshiping community, that is not going to change for a lot of people. And I don't think it has to necessarily. If it works for them, then, it works. That's great. It's beautiful. You can find, beautiful belonging, in a traditional church. but it's the future part that interests me about what is changing about it. And I do believe that the role it has to change. It's already changing. The way that people relate to authority has completely changed.
Yeah.
And that is going to impact this conversation in a huge way. It used to be that, we all thought that there was this sort of like straight linear top down line from God to the priest or prophet to the people. And, authority and meaning and truth and knowledge was basically in one, locus of authority, in one place. It was a source of divine guidance. That's changing. It is changing to something different from the traditional role of the pastor as the expert or the best Christian. That's all changing. There's this one pastor I know who once said, like, your congregation cannot grow beyond the spiritual maturity of its pastor. And years ago I bought that, but of course, like now I realize, then something's really wrong with this whole picture, this top-down hierarchy of, spirituality, where one person has somehow more access to God than I do, or, and so I think the role of pastor has to move toward more of a facilitator, a gatherer, rather than the expert who has all the answers. And so we're recognizing that knowledge and wisdom and meaning can come from the many and not just the one, not just the few. And we're going to need to see more of the body of Christ activated, more of collective wisdom being able to surface and, solve all these complex problems that no one has the answers to. So I'll say that we do need experts who've done their homework. We need Bible experts. We need people who are good at running a religious organization. But we also need to recognize that being an expert at one thing does not make you an expert at everything. And we need the body. And so somehow there has to be a different way of operating that shares power and allows every voice to be heard and activates more of the whole community, rather than just constantly talking and dominating the conversation all the time.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing now.
No, this is how a podcast works. You're doing it perfectly. You led that response off by just talking about how our societal response to authority is changing rapidly. And that's the way we see that showing up in culture is so fascinating, because I think we don't name it. We don't say, well, there's a root of this. We all see authority differently than we did 30 years ago. And so protests against police happen. And so the way that young people relate to their teachers or to their professors or to their first bosses is dramatically different than the expectations were. And so the way that the expectations we have when we walk into a church and there's a pastor, those are different, or at least there is a moment of maybe some friction, because we might have ideas in our head of what a pastor is and the authority that they might have, but we also might be coming from an age of, well, we don't really relate to anybody else in our life like that anymore. And that's strange to me. Anyway, just naming the way that we interact with authority is changing is such a fascinating thing to circle and say, now consider why that's impacting your spiritual deconstruction, or now consider why that's impacting what you expect out of a church that you don't feel like it's giving to you anymore, because our expectations of even just that one thing have changed so dramatically.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with when Phyllis Tickle, the late Phyllis Tickle, when she talks about these like major shifts that happen throughout church history about every 500 years or so. The key question there is, where is the authority? And the last shift being the Reformation, it was this question of like, hey, does the Pope really have all the authority, or is it somewhere else? And of course, like people killed each other over this question. And, it was really horrible. It went through this tremendously tumultuous period. But we saw this shift from authority being located in the church, the papal office, to the scriptures. And authority became more democratized. Like, now I have a Bible too. I can read it. But now we've almost come full circle and realized, hey, there are thousands of people with Bible degrees and they all disagree with each other. That's right. And there's over 45,000 denominations now that all say that they're right. So now, like, where's the authority? How we got to shift our whole paradigm of how we even relate to authority now, because now who has the authority? And the church is going to need to respond to that change, that shift.
So my sense is that New Wine Collective, and maybe you can walk us into your deepest, maybe foundational beliefs here, especially as they show up in the work that you're doing with New Wine Collective. But my sense is that New Wine Collective places authority in and trust in the people who are engaging with each other, or engaging with Scripture, or engaging with their faith in any given moment. You could put that better, I would guess. But where is the authority in New Wine Collective? I'm guessing people would ask that in a critical way. I'm asking in a way of like, oh, I think I think I'm excited about it. I think I like where the authority might be.
Yeah. I don't think, so I've never tried to articulate it this way, so I don't know how it's going to come out, but I don't think the authority rests in one place anymore. I think we're all a little right and a little wrong. And I think we're all on a journey. And I think we all bring our little piece of the puzzle, but no one has the whole puzzle. And so I really think like God's dream for the church is Jesus' prayer that we be one. Right now, we're not one. And I think the only way we can actually be one is to stop trying to be the whole thing, and stop trying to be like 100% right. And so, in fact, I think in a weird way, I think the authority is nowhere and everywhere. It's in the body of Christ, because only the body of Christ is the full picture, is the embodiment of the Christ. And so, so where's the authority? It's kind of like I'm putting it back into the church, I guess. It's the kingdom. And it's not even like, almost the question is weird. It's like, where's the authority? I mean, like the birds and the trees have things to teach us, and it has wisdom. The earth has wisdom, and of course the Bible has wisdom, and church tradition has wisdom, and and Western civilization has some wisdom, but also Eastern civilization has wisdom, and we're all part of this one thing. And that's where I feel like that's where spirit is moving. We need to learn to be and operate differently in the world. Instead of competing and dividing and trying to destroy each other and consume, we need to cooperate and listen and learn and love one another. It's very basic.
It is. It is. The deeper I go, the simpler, not easier, the simpler things seem to look. I love that. I think when I was watching some of the videos on the New Wine Collective website and listening to you talk just now reminded me of a couple of those. But instead of trying to be everything, instead of trying to be right, what if you just figured out how you might be able to help, like specifically how you might be able to help as a church or as a group or as a gathering, and then be curious about all the rest. I don't know. I think about, all right, so where do I think the authority is? Where does between place the authority? My answer to that question, I think, would be in the space between people, in the interchange, in the wonder-filled, risky, vulnerable, sometimes dangerous space between me and the next person I encounter. Somewhere in there, I believe God lives, and somewhere in there, I think the truth is. And the only way I can get close to that truth is by intentionally and wholeheartedly showing up in that space.
Mm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
rest will take care of itself. The rest I
Yeah.
don't need to know the answer to. I just have to be curious enough to wonder,
Mm.
to get a little closer to it. And for me, that's just such a fun. I love that we went down the authority path. That's because it's certainly not with me. I'll tell you, that's the last place
Mm.
you should look is whatever I said in the last YouTube video I put out is not
Mm.
where you should find authority about what's truth is. Like, no, that is meant to spark a conversation between you and somebody else.
Mm. Mm.
I'm,
I
uh,
appreciate that. Yeah.
I'd love to have you maybe preach to us for a moment. The
Hmm.
New Wine Collective is called New Wine Collective for a reason. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it has to do with
Yeah.
that old wineskins
That's
parable that
right. Yeah.
Jesus did. That always confuses me. I'll be honest. Every time, like
Mm.
I'll glance at it and be like, yeah, you need new
Mm.
things for new ideas and
Mm.
new people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll read it again and I'll be like, well, wait, doesn't he say it's about the old wine? Anyway, I get
Mm.
confused every time I read that.
Mm.
And that's me being honest about it. So maybe you could, what does that, maybe you could remind us about that old parable and
Mm.
help us know how you make meaning out of it.
Yeah. And like I'm not the authority. This is
Right.
just how I've come to understand it. But when Jesus talks about wineskins, and he says that people don't pour new wine into old wineskins; they pour new wine into new wineskins, and so on and so forth. To me, the way I understood it when I landed on this name is, I feel like when Jesus came, his good news, this proclamation, right, was the kingdom. It's this new reality. And and so I feel like that new wine is this new reality, this radically new way of being. And that radical new way, new inclusive way, this upside down kingdom, was not going to fit very nicely into the religious structures of his day that were very exclusive and hierarchical and kind of based on empire and all this stuff. And so I believe what he was kind of implying is that this new wine, this new reality, this new way of being needs new wineskins. It needs new containers, new ways of gathering, new practices, new ways of even just like relating with one another, not Jew, Greek, Gentile, these divisions. And so new wine, was good. um, it really should be called New Wineskins, I believe, like the work of New Wine Collective, but like it doesn't have the same ring to it. Like it's too close to foreskins, I guess. So wine, new wine is what we landed on. And the word collective was also a very intentional choice because just borrowing from artist collectives and other forms of organization, a collective is simply a group of people coming together around a shared purpose and a goal. But the key distinction is that it does not rely on an internal hierarchy in order to function. Yeah. It's a collective. And so it's a little bit more consensus-based. Leadership is flexible and shared. So the emphasis is on cooperation, collaboration, rather than competition. And so that's why I was really drawn to that word. I chose it, pretty early on. And then I feel like later everybody started using it. So I'm not saying I was the first, but, in the Christian world, I'll say. But I really like that word.
Yeah. Yeah. The word collective just by itself is it gives you a different invitation if this than the word church, right? If I just compare it to all the assumptions and all the baggage I bring around church, and if instead you invited me to collective, whether that was a local experience of it or some online brand, I have a different expectation of myself when I show up to a collective, right? And I think that's a powerful invitation. It's an an empowering invitation. I like that word too. Would it be okay? I want to ask you about. There's a line in your bio where it says that you had a part of your career maybe or a part of your life path where you were there at the beginning of a new church and then grew it into a multi-campus community. Uh, Between is one of the things in sort of my bullet point of bios too, and most of the other things in my life all have to do with groups and gathering groups, helping groups get started, and then helping groups grow. And I'll be honest with you, anytime, often when I talk to people about like, how did you grow a church? How did you take a small church and make it a big church? Or how did you take
Yeah.
a no church at all and started a brand new church?
Yeah.
Often the answers that I'll get are, well, we prayed a lot and God delivered. And I'm always like, that's good. Good. I also will pray, but somebody's got to do work to make that happen. And that actually, because I saw it in your bio, I know that's not what our topic is, but man, I would love to know how you did it, how you grew, how you were part of a team, I'm sure, that grew a small church into a multi-campus community, and maybe what lessons you could take from that you're applying to New Wine Collective, or maybe that other people can apply to projects like this.
Yeah, I have a ton of thoughts about this. I am very convinced that most people have no idea why their churches are successful.
Yeah,
I think everyone thinks they know, but I think it almost is always due to a bunch of factors that were outside their control.
Yeah.
And I would say that I think that's the case. That was the case for us. We all like to think it was based on, somebody's, it was like a God ordained thing, and God just kind of this like miraculous story. Like, what a disservice to all the other faithful people out there, who have been like working their tails off and being really faithful. And, I don't know how to answer that question because it's sort of like, Paul saying like, I don't even judge myself, it's like, what did we do right? I don't know. Like, was that even right? We happen to have a good children's program and, have one of the better shows in town, like, and people came. Like, that's probably the answer, and there was just at the time not that much competition, and we happened to appeal to a certain demographic that had money and resources. And so we could build quality programs. Like, it's not that spiritual, it's actually quite, almost carnal, when I step back and think about it. And if somebody gets up on a stage and is charismatic and, confident enough and, a little easy on the eyes, like, people come and they listen, and because they're preconditioned to sort of, place value in that, they're going to come. But there's like the vast majority of people in our neighborhood who are never going to walk through our doors.
Yeah.
Did we do something right? Was that good? Or was this like were we just, fulfilling the script, just running plays out of the playbook? And so that was a lot of kind of what I wrestled with in the few years leading up to my departure. Is like, as I started shifting in my own spirituality, I started valuing things differently and how we were doing things and what we were doing. And just kind of really wrestling with a lot of questions. Like, yeah, we're growing, but a lot of it is just people coming from other churches. People are coming every Sunday, but they're mostly just passive spectators. Are they being discipled? What does that even mean? Are people growing and maturing and being sent out? And are they taking responsibility for their own journey? Or are they just coming and listening to a sermon and then 3 days later can't remember what we even talked about? And so that was like a weird way to answer your question. Like, I have no idea. But
that was a great way to answer the question. I love that you. That was a great way. I'm excited about that answer for a number of reasons. Number one, I think you're right that when we just say, well, it was a God ordained thing, we're just kind of, I think, insulting a whole lot of people out there who are praying every day that 3 more people might show up to their church pews, because otherwise this dream that was started 150 years ago is going to die. And they're worried about that. They're genuinely, their heart is aching because God isn't ordaining an answer in their neighborhood. And that doesn't feel right. I also think I love that response, because the idea of of growing a church.
Mm.
And we call success of growing a church as more people are showing up and more people are maybe making donations, and we can count those things. That's fine, but we're not counting which churches did we steal those people from? Why did they leave those churches? What are we doing to the community? Are we? And to your point, like, is this even anything? Like, is this just because I got people coming being passive spectators on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning? Is that anything? Do I know that is doing anything?
Yeah.
And then it's got me wondering about, so what's the right way? So if you're going to grow New Wine Collective or collectives that are, maybe aligned with the work that you're trying to do right now, if I'm trying to grow between, and I want more people all over the world to be a part of this community, what do I have to do? What should I be sure to avoid? What are the possible pitfalls of growing a faith community? I think those are all worthwhile discussion topics that I just get excited about diving into.
Yeah. Are you expecting me to have an answer?
No, not really. No, but I'm curious if any of those things, as you think about maybe growing New Wine, or if you're going to advise me, hey, here's stuff that I'd be heads up about. If you're trying to grow between, here's what I wouldn't do, or here's what I definitely would do.
Yeah. I think I would say that a lot of my journey, a lot of my work has just simply been the process of me decentering myself, and seeing myself as somebody who wants to, create an environment where spiritual community can happen, rather than create dependency, and have the first and the final word, and keep people coming back to me for the next spiritual answer or fix, religious experience fix. It's not that I don't have good things to say. It's not that I don't have gifts to offer. It's just that after a while, I can't believe that I'm going to be the best pastor for a person forever. That just, I can't believe that would make sense. And eventually that person is going to need something different. Maybe an expression of spirituality that's just not my charism, it's not my gift, or it's from a voice that's different from mine. The idea that we would just kind of enter into this like weird awkward power dynamic relationship with a spiritual, authority figure. And like, it's not that you can't gain good things. It's more like, all right, power is supposed to flow. Like spirituality is supposed to be a journey, not a destination. You don't stay in one place your entire life, right? And even developmentally, there's a period of your life when you are very dependent. You need to be spoon-fed. But growing up means you start to take ownership for your own feeding, and you start taking responsibility for your own choices and your own journey. And so I'm really passionate about not being the way to do church, not being the person. I'm really passionate about creating a system where everything has a place. A system where people have freedom and autonomy and much more flexibility and access to the things that they need to take the next step in their journey. I think that's like a much more beautiful vision of the church, capital C, than these like siloed religious businesses that are all competing with one another and trying to compete for all the same people, and saying, hey, don't go to that church. They don't know what they're talking about, or they're heretics. Stay here and support my program, support this church because we have the answer, and this is the right way to worship, and this is the right way to read the Bible. That whole thing is just falling apart. It doesn't work.
Yes.
What's lacking is an alternative, a better way, a better system. And so I think we have to change the entire business model of church. We have to change our whole ecclesiology, because most of our ecclesiology has nothing to do with anything biblical. It's really, like you said, the product of industrial age. It mirrors capitalism more than it mirrors Christ. 501c3 organization that, runs program and has a paid staff and blah, 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 that whole thing. It's not all bad. It has its place, but the church is evolving. Yeah. It's got to adapt to the changes and, what's happening all around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that New Wine Collective is so much, or at least what you're communicating about it today is so much about creating an environment and a system that just hands the experience to whoever needs it today. And all the systems, all the tools you're building, all the structure isn't to keep people in. It's to hand it to people to take, so that they can take it away with them, so that they can take it into their world, into their lives. And that is a really beautiful vision for a new experience, a new definition of church, maybe we add new meaning to that word, that old word church, and maybe we feel it a little bit differently if we get to experience it that way. I really love that, Eugene. This conversation has been fantastic. I feel like you were coaching me there in that last answer. You weren't aiming it in my direction, I don't think, but I was feeling like, oh, I'm supposed to hear this right now, as I feel like we're at a precipice moment for between, a moment where it is about to graduate into another level. We'll start reaching more people in new ways. We're feeling that right now, and as it graduates into a new level, what are the things I got to stay grounded in my leadership of the project. And first and foremost, I want to say I fully agree with you. I don't want to be the center of it right now. In between, if people log on to Between, they're going to see my face a whole lot. And that is my least favorite part of Between. It's also like the thing that I haven't figured out a quick workaround. But you offer a model, by the way. If people go to your website, they might hear your voice in some of the videos, but they have to click a few times to even find your face. And even then, you don't center yourself in any authoritarian way or in any power hungry way. And I think I wanted to compliment you on that and say that you're offering a model for me to keep learning from, and for me to really admire and point other people to, as somebody who is also innovating in the faith world, not being afraid to experiment, not being afraid to try things that people are going to look at with a scowl on their forehead and, some wince in their eyes. I'm really impressed with what you're doing, Eugene. I want to offer that genuine compliment.
Thank you, Matt. That really means a lot to me. And I have no critique of people using their gifts and using their voice and, showing up that is not anything you should feel embarrassed or ashamed about. To me, it's more a matter of, I really believe that we need to collaborate more. I mean, as the church, and we need to create a way, that we can all be a part of the body together. It's just that system doesn't quite exist in any meaningful way right now. And so that's what I'm really passionate about and really trying to work toward. I like in my bio, I really am passionate about systemic change. I believe the problems in the church, and even the way that we're operating as independent, sort of nonprofits trying to do ministry in the world, the problems are systemic. They're not fixable by doing one thing differently. We have to actually create new systems that better meet our current reality. And so I look forward to just continuing conversation, because I believe in what you're doing 100%. I also know that there are so many people out there who kind of have this shared vision of what the kingdom can look like. My hope is to create something that can kind of come underneath people, that we all have a space, kind of like a big playing field, so I look forward to more conversations with you, Matt.
One of my favorite things that I've done with this podcast is really get to learn from a lot of really wonderful guests that we've had, but also behind the scenes, listeners don't know this, but I've got kind of an email chain of where I try not to spam people or let people spam each other, but all the guests that we've had, I'm trying to connect them with each other because I think there's a lot of people out there doing really brilliant things, all at least vaguely related to what we're doing at Between and around the ideas of sacred human connection and reimagining church. And I think there's not a lot of spaces outside of social media where they can work with each other and really connect with each other.
Yeah.
And because we all sort of operate in different pockets of the faith world, our pockets don't always cross over. And so I want to try to build some of those bridges as well. And I think that's a meaningful way to build new plumbing in a system that doesn't allow us to connect with each other. So, Eugene, tell everybody remind people where to go to find New Wine Collective, how to be involved in what you're doing, how to support what you're doing.
Yeah. Real simple. You could learn more on our website, newwinecollective.org. There's a newsletter there where I do my best to keep people updated about what's going on. And so there are going to be some ways that in the coming year that people can find a space to connect and collaborate with other people experimenting with alternative ways of gathering. It's something that we're going to be building out in the next year. So if anyone's interested in that, they can just basically just sign up for the newsletter. And that's how people can stay up to date.
Great. Well, Eugene, thanks for your time today. Thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for being a model of innovation and a model of humble faith in the world for a lot of us to look to, learn from, and appreciate. Appreciate you, Eugene.
Thank you, Matt. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Between podcast. I hope you'll check out all the other ways that you can participate in our global Between community. You can lead a Between group. You could organize one yourself or find one in your community. You can watch our weekly 5-ish minute sermons. You could read our articles and blogs on our newsletter. You could follow our social media accounts and engage there. You can join our private social media communities. The most important thing that you can do right now is go to between.church, go to our website, between.church, and fill out the form to get on our main email list. That's going to give you access to all of our stuff, and then you can kind of take it from there, do what feels right for you. Between is all about helping you discover new ways to apply your own faith, your own spiritual beliefs to the space between you and the next person you encounter. We believe the space between people, man, is sacred. It's maybe the most sacred space on earth. In fact, we often say that our favorite church is the space between people. So go with God's love. Go to your neighborhood, your dinner table, your coffee shop, your grocery store, your workplace, wherever you encounter people. Go with God's love and create the church between.